Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. My name is Stephen Walker. I'm the Vice President, South Pacific Counsel and Company Secretary for Hewlett-Packard Enterprise in Australia and New Zealand. It's a pleasure to be here, and this is a particularly a subject close to my heart, so I'm very much looking forward to the conversation.
Perhaps if you could explain the legal team within your organisation and how it operates in the context of technology, and that technology, is it a bridge with the private profession, whom I'm sure you have something to do?
Absolutely, yeah. And I should say, all my remarks this morning will be in context of my own experience, which is large law firm, corporate, multinational. That's pretty much where I've spent my time. First 8 years of my career was in private practice, both in London in a large law firm and in Sydney in a large law firm. And the last 10 years or so have been in-house with Hewlett-Packard. Might surprise people to learn that actually we have an enormous global legal department of around about 1,000 qualified lawyers and attorneys. In Australia, we have 9 on my staff and an extended legal community of around 15 solicitors, all providing specialised support in various business areas. The corporation in Australia is around about, and New Zealand I should say, around about 6,500 people, personnel. There's quite a large business here and requires extensive legal support. I'm accountable for the end-to-end legal service delivery for the business in Australia and New Zealand. Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, we've spent a lot of time in the last 5 years transforming how we deliver legal services to the businesses globally. And I'm fortunate to work quite extensively outside of this region on global initiatives. And we would think, like to say, spent a lot of time thinking on what our enabling technology strategy needed to be and is. And we regard technology and innovation as a strategic pillar for what the department does. It enables us to deliver new services, more efficient services, more cost-effective services, frankly, and better services more quickly than we've ever done before. It's been a tremendous journey along the way. Right now, we are using around up to sort of 30 or so dedicated legal applications. So not talking about general office applications, I'm talking about specific legal applications which do specific legal things for role, depending on what your role is in the company. Whether it be M&A transactional work, there's an application that supports that. Whether it be customer contract negotiation work, there's an application to support that. Litigation has an application, e-billing has an application, digital signatures. So we've invested a lot of money and time in both the technology and the business processes to implement them, along with the change management to introduce those so that they're a seamless part of legal service delivery. And right now we're at the point at which we're harnessing tremendously interesting data on how we deliver our services. And the insights that we're starting to gather from the operation of a department at that scale globally is truly mind-blowing. And we're on the cusp of starting to really mine that information for just how we can do things better, cheaper, faster in the future. So we're very excited by that. We've also spent a lot of time on identifying the correct metrics by which the department globally runs. And of course, depending on one's role, one has metrics associated with that, and they're aligned closely to the business outcomes we're looking to deliver. And that philosophy is understood within the department. We understand that the decisions we're making are data-driven now. It's no longer gut feel, experience, anecdote, war story. We've moved into a data-driven environment with real-time reporting and instrumentation around how we deliver services.
With those technological developments, what has that done for the number of lawyers that you would employ? Has that led to a reduction in the number, or has it led to an increase in the number?
We have experienced a net increase over the last 3 years. And it's a good question because, of course, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt when one introduces a new technology is what does that do for me as an individual? our experience is that, and my experience is that it's a facilitator. We're not replacing people right now. We are looking at ways in which we can augment how they do their jobs and how we deliver services better for our clients. And we have actually been, and we're on the record of having said this, and so I make no bones about it. We have been aggressively moving work into the department and away from external spend. And that means more high-quality law is being practiced inside our organisation than has ever been done before. That's not to undervalue, by any stretch, the wonderful relationships we have with external counsel. But wherever we can do it faster, cheaper, better internally, and it makes more sense to do it internally, we bring it in. So we've actually been growing internally rather than shrinking, and the technology has been helping us.
And what about I mentioned before the bridge with private law firms. Has technology played a part in that? Are you using technology to instruct or interact or deal with your legal service provider?
To an extent. I mean, we do the fairly conventional things, from e-billing to forecasting. Law firms input budget forecasts and reconciliations and actuals into a tool. So in that sense, yes. We also, in other areas, yes. For example, the IP department uses an extensive set of portfolio management tools which are accessible to our external law firms who work on those with us. In more of our day-to-day transactional work, and a lot of our lawyers do customer negotiation work and big transactions, big enterprise, government, sales transactions and services transactions. And in that sense, no, because we've insourced most of that work. So we don't have such a need to engage with outside counsel on it. But certainly, if we do, then the platforms that we have in place allow the easy dissemination and flow of information between us and external providers. Absolutely.
You mentioned before about the apps that I think you use for different parts of your organisation.
Yes.
Are they developed internally, or have they been acquired from external sources?
The answer is that it's a mix, but, and this is my personal view, that companies, particularly technology companies, don't necessarily have a role to play in the development of these applications in the future. There are lots of good organisations out there developing really wonderful applications for legal departments to use. It's extremely expensive to do internally, and frankly, it's not our core business. If we can't source something from the market, we might have a go at it, and we are doing an occasional one or two examples. But it makes more sense for us to acquire third-party technology by way of license or perhaps acquisition, but mainly license, than it does to spend a lot of time internally developing something. That's not really the future as I see it for large legal departments. Better off capitalise on the investments that others have made wherever possible.
Questions?
Yes, you mentioned the change, the growth in your team, the pure numbers, so to speak. To what extent has the people inside's day-to-day changed as a result of these, these innovations, these changes?
Yeah, that's a terrific question. It has required a significant transformation in how people do their work. We ask people now, our teams, to work within tools. So gone are the days where you'd have a manila file, and that was your file, and you worked on it, and you had someone printing things and putting them. That's not the way we work now. I mean, dinosaurs, and perhaps I'm among them, still print things. But we ask people to work within the tools, and the tools, the online tools, have workflow systems that help you guide through the particular transaction that you're doing. And at each point in the life cycle of whatever it is you're doing, the tool prompts you to upload documents, or gives you templates, or gives you instructions. So we're asking people more and more to integrate the tools into their working lives. And so if you're a person who just likes to work on his or her file and doesn't want to use a computer all day, I think you're going to find it increasingly challenging in large departments when people just move into the online world. Because that's in my assessment at least, the future of legal service delivery. That'll happen more and more.
Have you found that have you found your people to be receptive to that sort of change, or have you had to go through a bit of a
huge change management program? Absolutely. I mean,
change in people as
when
well.
I think about role, it really is a great question, because the challenge is not technology, it's people. And if one is going to introduce at scale a new technology for people to use, the rule of thumb I try to use is 50% of your investment ought be on the technology deployment and 50% ought be on the people program management. And it can't be underestimated. Because lawyers in particular, we're a little bit reticent to adopt new technologies. It's a characteristic. I don't say it's a bad thing, but it is a feature of being a lawyer. We've traditionally been quite wedded to the way we work. And it's not for everybody. But my assessment, the future lawyers will become quite accustomed to working with data, with tools, in an online environment, using mobility tools out of the office. And I think if you're clinging to pens and paper and manila files, you're going to be swimming against the tide in the next 5 years.
Just on that, do you have any comment on the skill sets of graduates coming out of university and whether they're equipped to deal with the technology, for example, within your organisation?
I do, and it's something I've spent a bit of time talking about recently. For this reason, we run a graduate program in Australia every year. We took on 3 final year, third year law students. We take them on every Christmas, every summer. And so I get the opportunity to interact and see what they're learning in the law school. I talk about a future law toolkit. And in that toolkit, I would, in addition to one's hard legal skills, I would build the following. An understanding of the use of data and analytics to help reach decisions and to combine and incorporate them into your practice. That's important because it's going to become more and more relevant as we move in a data-driven world. Unfortunately, Microsoft Excel and other data applications are kind of anathema to lawyers. We break out into cold sweats if we're asked to spend too much time looking at spreadsheets. But the fact is, future lawyers will need to integrate that kind of analytics into their practice. So I'd love to see more focus in the law schools on at least introducing lawyers to the notion that that's the way they may work in the future. I'd love to see more focus, again, from a multinational corporation perspective on business acumen. I think that would be extremely valuable for the next generation of lawyers. I'd like to see more introduction of legal project management methodologies in law schools, or at least have that as an option. Perhaps combined with some lean process. There are many different methodologies around for looking at process. But we heard a moment ago about business processes, and I think it's very helpful for lawyers emerging law school to understand process, because it helps them work more efficiently. They don't need to be black belts in Lean Six Sigma, but they ought to have some basic appreciation, I think, of questioning how they can do things more efficiently. And then finally, technology. I mean, I talked a lot about applications, and it doesn't much matter what you use. What matters is that you're receptive to working in a slightly different way to how lawyers have in the past. And perhaps that might be, once we get to some industry standards on common applications, it'd be terrific to see attention to those in the law schools. We're not at any point yet where there's an industry standard transactional program or practice management program or litigation program. But I think that's an area that if I were a law school dean, I would be looking at for the future, because it's going to be vital for the forthcoming lawyers to have an appreciation.
Thank you.
And are we heading in the direction of standardisation or fragmentation?
I don't think we're anywhere close, in my assessment, to standardisation yet. It's still too new, but it'll get there. I think we're seeing some really high-quality platforms coming out now, but I don't think we're at any, and I hesitate to name applications at the risk of being seen to endorse them, but there are some terrific ones out there now. I think the challenge on that, if you'll permit me, in somewhere like Australia and New Zealand, is that the majority of our in-house legal departments are between sort of 1 and 5 lawyers. and therefore the cost of acquisition, adoption, deployment of these technologies is still prohibitive. So if I were to say anything to the vendors out there, I would be spending my time on looking at how I can reduce the capital cost of onboarding new law departments, because there's a wonderful opportunity. There's some wonderful technology out there, but frankly, it's just beyond the reach right now of where the majority of our practitioners are operating.
This might be a bit of a Dorothy Dixer, but I'd be interested in your comments on your experience of working in an organisation that is not state-based, but nationally based and internationally based, and then part of a global organisation. Just how does the technology work for you in that sphere?
It's a good question. Let me give you an example. So some time ago, we introduced time tracking for lawyers, which was tremendously popular, as you can imagine. So now all our lawyers use a time tracking application, and that data is visible to everybody, depending on, of course, your role. All the data is available in real time. So the global general counsel sees everything, and then depending on your role, my own manager sits in Singapore looking after the whole of Asia Pacific and Japan. He can see what my team are doing. There's no hiding in this world. The managers can see all the transactions people are supporting, all the litigation matters, how long they're spending on those things. And that data is invaluable. We don't use it as performance management. We're not looking at this data to see how we can eliminate people or who isn't pulling their weight. We're looking at it to see what levers we can pull globally to get better and more efficient and deliver higher quality services. So if we can compare and contrast, to your question, we can compare and contrast between regions and between countries and look at where best practices lie and how they can be applied elsewhere. And of course, it gives you that opportunity to shift resources to where they're needed. And if we're having a number of very specialist pieces of litigation done in a particular country, that's visible and it's available for the right people to see. So we can make real-time decisions about how to support that work without waiting to the end of the year when someone does a report and says what we did this year. We can now do it in real time, which it's tremendously powerful because you can reallocate the company's resources to where they're most required, and we do that on a frequent basis.